Hey, I'm Mark Cathcart, Union County 4-H agent, and I'm here today with Bryan Smith, the Lawrence County area livestock agent. And Bryan, I'm out here taking some soil samples. You know, we're in this recently cut hay field, and we want to take some soil samples and do some planning for our future fertilizing program. And I've got my ditching shovel. This is what I usually use. I come out here and take my samples, and I got my bucket. I've already washed it out and cleaned it out so I don't have any contamination from previous samples. And I see you brought that nice soil probe, and I've used one of those before, but you know, I'm thinking about if we do soil samples in the summertime and the ground gets really hard, it's pretty difficult to take soil samples. There's got to be a better way.
You're right. Even these little things, it's hard to get them in the ground when it gets real hard and tight out there.
It does. I have bent those before taking soil samples.
Yeah, I think we all have.
Can you help me out with that?
Well, we've been working on something. It started out at Oklahoma State. They came up with the first idea on it, but we've done a little bit of work here, and Reed Edwards here has helped us out with some development on it, and a gentleman by the name of R.D. Morrison's helped us out with it as well. It's a variation of what we call a sweatless soil sampler, and it actually uses a power drill and just a few simple fittings.
Oh, man.
PVC pipe. It's on the bottom of it, you'll see a conduit nut and just a washer. Right on the bottom of it there, just nothing to it. And you know, $5 bucket, a few dollars worth of fittings. Now I will warn you, the expensive part of this is the drill bit. That's probably a $30, $35 drill bit or something like that, but it does last a good long time. So Reed, why don't you stick that in the ground and show us how that works?
So this one's set up to take a 6-inch sample, and we just run the drill down. Comes back up. There's a hole in the side of the pipe, and so you get a 6-inch soil sample, and we collect the soil in the bucket.
I'm gonna tell you, I have never seen anything like that, and I'm taking a lot of soil samples. That sure looks like it takes the work out of it. And you know, when you told me about a sweatless soil sample, I thought you was talking about the soil sweating in the bag, but you talking about us sweating.
I'm talking about the lack of any type of work we have to do to get into the ground and get it back out. Now these things work great.
I like that even better.
Mm-hmm. So. It is also consistent on the depth. So what will happen is when we go all the way down, in this case, this one's set up for 6 inches. So there's 6 inches of drill bit sticking out into the ground. So I'm getting 6 inches every time.
Yeah.
When the ground gets hard with that, you may not get down to your regular, you know, the depth you're after.
Well, yeah, you're right. There's some places that when I'm using this method, I may get a little deeper in some places, might get them a little shallower in others. I may get more dirt from one place than I do another. So the consistency of the sample, which will make the results a lot better, I can see that this is a good thing. I like that. Well,
yeah. Oklahoma State originally came up with the idea, but they just use a simple male adapter and a nut in the bottom. They had no depth control, which out in their soils, it's not such a big deal. But around here, if we're doing something like pastures and forages, we decided to put lime on one year because the soil test counts for it, and we keep taking deep soil samples. Eventually, we're going to be calling for lime when we're taking soil samples because it takes the lime so long to leach down and get down into the depth of the soil.
Right.
So if we're consistently taking, say, a 4-inch soil sample in pastures and hay fields, we get a much better return on seeing what the lime's done and should we need it again in 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever it happens to be.
All right.
So.
Well, that's a good deal. I want to see that work a little bit more. Why don't we, let's go over here and take a few more samples.
All right.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna tell you what, guys, I've never taken a soil sample like that, and you're right. I mean, it's pretty warm out here. I barely broke a sweat. I threw my bucket, my shovel away. This system works great. Now, Bryan, what about the bits? How long can I look at using a bit?
It depends on how hard your ground is. If you're doing a nice plow moisture and not having any problems getting in the ground and all, you can pull 150, 160 cores without a problem on a single bit. And we're figuring 15 to 20 cores per field, so that gives you a lot of ground and a lot of fields to cover on there. When you get in harder times, you're getting clay soils and it's really dry, you might find out the bit wears out after 120, 130, maybe 140 cores. So, you know, you'll find it real quickly. We've got 2 bits here and we'll show you this later, but this one's a brand new bit. It's got a real nice sharp edge on it. After you've worn on that sand for a lot of times, the bit wears down on the edges. So that's what causes it not to go into the ground very well. You can still force it, but it's a job when it gets to this point.
I got you. And of course your your drill kind of depends on, you'll know how long your battery lasts and that kind of thing. So just be sure to have an extra battery. But
4 amp hour battery, Mark, on us has lasted 160 cores in good plow ground and still had battery left on it.
Oh, that's nice.
Now I went 140 cores on a battery and a half when it was really dry one time. You know, that makes a huge difference on it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, listen, this is pretty neat. I think I need one of those. How about, can you take me back to the office and show me how to build one of these for myself?
Sure, be glad to.
All right. I bet you'd like to have one too, so stay tuned and we'll show you how to make one. Well, Brian, we made it back out of the field, and I tell you, I'm sold on this idea. I've never taken a soil sample this way. I've always used the old method, and you know what? It really is a sweatless method. And you told me you'd show me how to put a bucket together, so let's do that so I'll have my own bucket.
It's real simple and easy. All you need is some 3/4 inch PVC parts, very inexpensive for those, and one of these $5 feed buckets you find at the feed and seed stores. Recommend you try to get one with kind of a flat bottom, but what I'm more important in here is it's a big thick bucket.
Okay.
And as far as the PVC goes, a piece of PVC pipe, a male adapter will get you started. So what we'll do is, what we normally do is put a hole through the PVC pipe, you know, whatever size will fit there. And we tried initially to put just a single hole in there and let the soil come out, but if it's a little bit of moisture to it, that plugs up on us pretty quickly. So we ended up doing something more like this. So we drilled a hole in one end and drilled a hole at the other end, and then you can use a coping saw or bandsaw or something like that just to cut out the wall between, and that gives it a nice open area to let soil exit real quickly. So that works out really nicely. So you drill the hole, take the PVC, take the male adapter, just a standard 3/4 inch male adapter you find at the store. You can friction fit these on, they work pretty well. And the only other thing you need to attach it to the bucket is a conduit nut. And this conduit nut will screw right onto that male adapter and hold it in place in the bucket. If you hold that bucket up, you see we've drilled an appropriate sized hole in the bottom of the bucket that this will fit right through there. So it's a real simple fit, nothing else required. We have found out a few things. The first thing is R.D. Morrison and Reed Edwards both said that this can get a little bit of torque on the tube if it's a little bit moisture in the soil. So they added a T onto it with a little handle. So if you ever run into that when you're holding it, you can hold it by the handle and do your drilling in. It takes all the issues of the torque out of it. That works out really well. The other thing you need to worry about is when you set this up is to make sure that you make it long enough to get the appropriate depth. This one's set up for about a 4-inch depth, and if you measure it right there to the tip, it's just about 4 inches on this one. And if you take a shorter one that you want to go deeper, say you've got plowed ground and want to go deeper like that, you can set it up and cut off the pipe so it's the appropriate depth, and then you get your 8-inch depth or 6-inch depth, whatever you want here. And if you're just using in a forage situation, pasture, hayfield, what have you, all you need is one depth. Just get the 4-inch depth, and usually I'll write it on there with a Sharpie just to remember what I have. Then Mark, you just take that and stick it in the bucket.
Okay.
Put a conduit nut on the bottom of it. And you're ready to go on that one, and that one will do for pastures. Now, if you're doing something with pastures and you also have some plowed ground you need to sample, you can make a double unit like we have here. This bucket here has actually got one set up with a double unit in it. You can see that. It has an 8-inch depth one here and a 4-inch depth one here. We can use this one to take samples out of the pastures and forages and take this one out of the row crop fields. Use the same bucket for both of them. It's just a little bit extra parts, and I use a cross in it instead of a T is all that's there. So that's all it is to it as far as what's going on with the assembly of it. It's very simple, 3/4 inch PVC pieces and a conduit nut. And to aid you folks, we have a fact sheet on the land grant press at Clemson University that talks all about this, how to assemble it, what parts you may need, and what other tools you might need to go with it.
Well, that's great. And you know, Brian, I appreciate you helping me put my bucket together, and I think I'm gonna go take some soil samples and bring them back in a little while.
Well, one thing I'll mention, make sure you take enough. Normally we ask people to take 10 or 15 cores from a pasture, and we found out with this 3/4 inch, if you take 15 to 20 cores, it'll fill this nice little soil bag up just where it needs to be.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, man, I appreciate it, and I think I'm gonna go take some soil samples.
Thanks, sir.
All right.